we really turn each piece of creative into a humongous data set of its features and components. And then what we do is we try to find trends and what are those components that seem to be correlated or predictive of driving higher sales and what is not. And ultimately, what this discovers is fundamentally, this goes back to the sense of honest marketing is, what is the essence of that company that resonates with their customers? What are the core value props of that business that drives sales? Not drives clicks or drives engagement, but drives sales.
Welcome back to another episode of the Honest Marketing Podcast, where you'll learn proven strategies to grow your business without selling your soul. You like that line, right, Hikari? I'm Travis Albritton, and joining me today is Hikari Senju, founder of Omneky, and we're going to dig into all things AI, specifically AI applications in advertising, digital advertising, image creation, and businesses that really want to lean into an omnichannel approach to growing their brand awareness, their thought leadership, and converting sales online. So, Hikari, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Travis.
Yeah, and we had a great conversation before we even hit record about our backgrounds and where we came from. So I thought you would definitely appreciate the, grow your business without selling your soul line, because I think that's something we both align on. So let's just jump right off the bat. Just walk me through a little bit your background professionally, and then also Omneky, kind of the origin story of your company and what you do there.
Sure. So I grew up in New York. My grandfather worked at IBM. My dad's an artist. And so when I studied computer science at Harvard, and I was taking a lot of AI, focus on AI. And I was taking a lot of AI courses at MIT as well. And so when I saw about a decade ago, the early generative AI demos, kind of a precursor to generative adversarial networks, I got very excited about technology because it combined a lot of my interests growing up and kind of my environment growing up, which is this intersection of technology and art. And the idea that an AI could be an artist, an AI could generate art, I found really, really fascinating. And so that's what really got me hooked into generative AI, back in 2014, 2015. And then separately, I had started two venture-backed companies at college. One of them was in education. It was a personalized learning application. And it was acquired by another company where I became head of marketing. And so it was there running marketing with this passion I had in generative art that got me to start Omneky back in 2018 for the purpose of using AI to generate personalized ads and effective advertisements. And since then, we're the first mover in generative AI advertising, and the company's been growing, and we've been riding many of these technological waves. And so it's really been an exciting journey for us. But that's just a quick synopsis of my journey thus far.
Yeah, so that's really great. And I'm definitely looking forward to digging into more of specifically what you do. Who would you describe as your ideal clients, and how you think about, here's the problem that we're solving for this particular type of client?
Sure, absolutely. So, there's this famous saying, right, which is that I know my advertising is working, I don't know which half. And and that's, true today as it was ever true. I think there was some research done a couple of years ago that said that 55% of marketing budgets are wasted on ineffective content. We're still kind of in this realm where, marketers throwing things against the wall, seeing what sticks, doesn't stick, and it's not particularly effective. So our users are creative directors and marketing directors that want to create more effective content to drive additional sales for their business. And what we do is we generate thousands of variations of content using AI to based on insights, based on data that we're getting from the ad platforms that are more likely to drive higher conversions. And the other key thing to note here is that 55 to 75% of marketing success is driven by the creative. So the creative is the most important lever for growth, but it's also one of the least understood and kind of less like the least scientific in some ways. And so what we do is we quantify the designs and we help generate more effective content that's more likely to drive sales for our customers.
Okay. I have about 17 follow-up questions. So that's super fascinating because, I've sold a lot of products, sold a lot of services. And whenever you're trying to create ad creative, you're trying to do like 15 things at once. You're trying to appeal to your target audience and repel anyone who's not interested. You're trying to grab their attention, but do it in a way that grabs their attention in the right way. The copy that you're writing is supposed to hook them, open a story loop in their mind about how can this company or service or person help me with something, whether I know that it's a problem or not. offer a solution that's valuable to me, and do all of this with some type of visual aid and creative. And historically, what you do is you just run a ton of A/B tests about every single piece of the funnel and try and figure out what works. But you're just throwing spaghetti on the wall and kind of trying to stumble your way through the darkness towards something that works. And then once it stops working, you don't know why it stopped working. So you're kind of back at square one. That's my experience running creative ads. So how have you been able to use AI to help make that process of discovery and optimization more efficient? Because you mentioned pulling in data from these different platforms to kind of project and figure out what's performing well. What are the things that you use to track that and to feed that optimization engine?
Sure. So the first step is quantifying design. So, historically design was something that, the realm of instinct, in the realm of artists. And it was very difficult to put into words why some creative, when some was performing better than another, other than just kind of the gut instinct of the person making the piece of content. And so what we do is we use computer vision and, the reasoning and multimodal capabilities of AI. So AI can now quantify design, can explain in an image or in a video, the story is told in that image or video, the features of that piece of content. You can actually have AI dissect a piece of creative in really multiple different dimensions, from persuasion tactics and the tone of voice and the colors and the balance and the composition. And then you can also use computer vision to identify the elements within that image or video. And so we really, turn each piece of creative into a humongous data set of its features and components. And then what we do is we try to find trends and what are those components that seem to be correlated or predictive of driving higher sales and what is not. And ultimately what this discovers is fundamentally, this goes back to the sense of honest marketing is, what is the essence of that company that resonates with their customers? What are the core value props of that business that drives sales, not drives clicks or drives engagement, but drives sales? And that's distinct oftentimes from what's driving engagement because, unless somebody really wants and resonates with that core value prop, they're not going to buy the product. And so what we do is we discover, what are the core value props that are attracting the right users to their website and to their homepage who have the highest intent of converting and finding value from that product. And that is a data-driven approach.
So I just want to mirror this back to you to make sure that I'm picking it up correctly. You have all this data out there as far as we're not only generating lots of images and types of copy and headlines and text and things like that, but now we're throwing it into the world and we're getting the feedback through the funnel and we're identifying and starting to correlate big data with an AI kind of like coach that's also filtering through the data and identifying the trends. And okay, this person came through this advertisement and this many people got to hear, but not to hear. So then we can suggest this as like either a further iteration to try and optimize it more, or this is the winner for these reasons. Because big data was like the thing before AI became the thing, right? Everyone wanted big data, cloud computing. It doesn't matter.
AI is still big data.
Just need more,
AI
right?
Is, it's interesting. AI is probably just bigger data.
Yeah, it's even more data.
The scaling laws of AI such, right, is really fundamentally that the more compute, the more data, the more, the more powerful this thing is. And so it's almost like brute forcing reasoning capabilities through bigger and bigger data.
Yeah. I have some existential questions to ask you at the end about that, but yes, keep going.
But it's exactly as you're saying, right? And the other key component to note here is that, who is the gate when it comes to programmatic advertisements or when it comes to digital advertisements? It's like the question is, who is the gatekeeper, right? This isn't just, like broadcast advertising where who's seeing it, these are the households, and they bought some product, but it's algorithmically driven. So the algorithms ultimately determine who sees the ad, and the algorithm is optimized based on a conversion metric, oftentimes, a sign up or purchase event on the homepage. And you have tracking and pixels set up on the homepage or the website to provide that feedback to the advertising platform's algorithm so they can optimize for that event. And what that means then is ultimately, in some ways, the creative is not about it's almost counterintuitive, which is you almost want to pre-qualify the people going to your website with your marketing message as specifically as possible so that you're not getting the clicks from people who are not going to be purchasers of your product, which is different from, say, brand advertising or from broadcast advertising, where you're really trying to approach, it's all about breadth and appealing to the widest audience possible. in some ways, programmatic advertising is about appealing to the narrowest audience as possible so that the algorithms can get better at showing the ads to the people who are most likely to be a purchaser of your product. And so therefore, the question with the data-driven approach is how, let's test the different messaging to make sure that only the people who are really interested in buying the product click on the ad. Because initially the algorithms will be optimized for clicks and then ultimately end up being people who purchase the product or sign up. And so that's the other key component here is understanding how the algorithms, using data to understand how the algorithm is distributing a piece of content, and then optimizing the content for the algorithms to show the ad to the people who are most likely to be the consumers of your product.
Yeah, you always want to filter out those false positives where
Exactly.
you can start to develop a profile, quote unquote profile of somebody who's interested in your website, but it's actually happens to just be people that like the color green and your ad was mostly green and they just clicked on it. That's a ridiculous example, but stuff like that happens where it's like, we used a puppy in the image and we got crazy engagement. So we kept using puppies in our advertising and then nobody was converting because our product has nothing to do with puppies, but people were just expecting puppies when they clicked on the button.
It goes back to this idea of, to your point, honest marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how can you be as honest and straightforward as possible so the algorithms can be effective in showing the ad to the right person who's most likely interested in buying a product and not some generic. If you want to get a lot of engagement, share a funny meme, right? That's going to get a lot of engagement, but those people are not necessarily going to be the people most interested in buying your product. They're going to click on the ad because they think it's funny, but they're not going to go into that website with the intent of buying the product. And so it's about getting the right people in the door of your shop and making sure that the messaging is reflective of attracting the right type of person into your shop.
So you mentioned, that these platforms you're advertising in, whether it's Google or TikTok or Facebook, they all have their own optimization algorithms, their own priorities, right? Their priorities, let's keep them on the app as long as possible. And then you certainly put in like, this is the action I want to take and this is what I want to optimize towards. How are you identifying or even keeping track of what those different platforms are optimizing for as far as just ad impressions? Because typically you just have like your third-party tracking set up. You would have that feedback in some sort of pixel activity. But are there even deeper ways that you can connect with these platforms to really get a sense of what's going on under the hood?
Yeah. When we talk about personalization and personalized ads, I would say the content's personalized in three ways. One is it's personalized for the brand. So we fine-tune the model on the customer's brand. It's personalized for the consumer, as in, we're showing the right value prop to that person who's in that value prop, because a company or product may have multiple value props and you want to find the right value prop that resonates with that individual. And then the third component is personalizing for the platforms. What is the type of content that is getting more distribution on say a social channel? And that depends, right? Because the type of content, that does well on one platform might not be the type of content that does well on another, depending on the algorithms. And, maybe, for example, you might need music or something for one platform and, you might need, something else for a different platform. And so it's definitely analyzing also what types of content is getting the most distribution on a specific platform. And that does also mean sometimes the creative has to change depending on the platform that's being distributed on. And we analyze these trends because we have tons of data, not just from across all our customers. We're running these ads across all our customers. And so we're seeing trends in terms of what types of content is getting more distribution depending on which platform the ad is running on.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked at like a very high level. And if anyone's listening that hasn't run a million Facebook ads campaigns before, they may be like, I'm totally lost. I have no idea what's going on. So I think a great way to kind of bring this home would be just to talk through like a case study of a client that's utilized your platform, how they applied it, the things that they learned from before they started working with Omneky to after, whether it's how it aided their ad creation, how it aided their optimization, how it impacted their sales or, the ROAS, like any of those kind of details to kind of flesh out like all these hypothetical things we've learned about optimization and AI driven creative. What does this actually look like when you apply it to a digital marketing campaign?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So one case study is a company called McKean. And this is partly a dev shop to help businesses develop their applications. And what we discovered was that, for example, the phrase project builders in the text of the ad drove higher click-through rates by 11%. Showcasing and highlighting images of technology drove higher click-through rates by 25%, and including a smartphone in the image also drove higher click-through rates by 50%. And so ultimately what this resulted in was 6 times increase in reach, a 67% increase in sales qualified leads, and close to 10% decrease in the cost of a lead. Another company that we worked with is a company called OneBuild, which is a SaaS software for construction companies. And highlighting the phrase projects in the headline of the copy drove increased click-through rates by 20%, and, definitely including imagery of construction workers drove click-through rates by 10%, and then having the phrase best partner also drove click-through rates up by 50%. And ultimately what this resulted in was, close to a 367% increase in reach, 400% increase in estimated ad recall, and 600% increase in marketing qualified leads. So those are 2 examples of customers that use specific insights. And these are some of the examples of insights that we utilize to drive higher business results.
Yeah. And I think what's super powerful about that is without a tool like the one that you've built, you may see one ad is outperforming the other, but you have no idea why. You're just like, it's working. Let's just now split test this against another idea. But until you have like just so much data and background that you can say was relative certainty, like this is what's driving this type of results, you're not able to identify those trends or connect those dots because there's just so much data to try and consume and understand as a person, where an AI model can look at the whole thing and say, oh, well, it's these 4 things. These are the 4 factors that are driving these types of results. Let's zero in on that and keep working.
Yeah, and it's through this kind of multi-arm bandit approach, which is seeing all the features of the ad, seeing what features were in common with highest performing ads, seeing which features exist in lowest performing ads, and then optimizing based on, and creating more content based on the features of the highest performing ads.
Yeah, that's all really, really fascinating. And for anyone who's listening, omneky.com, it'll be in the show notes. You can click over, check it out, see the different case studies they have, see the platform. I think one of the things that I was curious about, just kind of pivoting a little bit to the AI industry in general, is the last 2 years, it just kind of been like this whirlwind of activity where now NVIDIA is the most important company in the world. Whereas before they just made video game chips. So it's crazy to think how much has shifted in 2 years, but you've seen kind of like every iteration of it going back quite a bit. I'm curious what your read is on just the AI industry as a whole. A lot of people think we may be in a bubble, that there's going to be some sort of regression to the mean. There's going to be a filtering out of, the chaff, so to speak, where they just, a company says we're AI and it's really just ChatGPT with a different skin on it. What's your kind of read on the AI industry and where it is and where it's going?
It's definitely the biggest thing to happen since the internet. And I think there's definitely a lot of noise, but the power of this technology is very real. It is resulting in significant productivity increases for any type of creative work, whether that is a developer or a marketer, or even a researcher. And I think the stage we're in is it's still in the very early stages, which is there's a lot of noise and you kind of need to figure out what the signal is. And I think regarding companies like NVIDIA and how well they're doing is potentially this thesis that a lot of the value will be captured by these hardware providers, as even the software potentially that historically has captured a lot of margin is commoditized due to this technology. And so I think that kind of reflects and then kind of the developer network moat they have through CUDA, as well as kind of their manufacturing processes. And so that's probably a thesis behind the value of NVIDIA, but it is impacting and is going to impact every single industry.
Yeah, well, NVIDIA has kind of become a proxy for the AI industry simply because so many of the large language models just run on NVIDIA chips, that they seem to be best positioned to run that type of AI learning.
Well, if you want to fine tune a model, I mean, right now, the NVIDIA chip is really like the only chip really, like it's all the developers are comfortable programming in CUDA, and it's kind of like they have a lock in fine tuning right now. And so that does, explain why almost all these large language models are built on their infrastructure.
Yeah. Now, one thing I want to ask you just about like your tech stack, because, I've kind of observed as somebody not directly in the AI industry, but who utilizes AI tools, that there will be this crop or this wave of products and services, and then ChatGPT makes an upgrade or an update, and then they all crash and burn because they were basically just skinning something that ChatGPT was doing in a unique application, or they had over relied on a particular way that an LLM was interacting with their platform in order for it to function. So number one, I don't imagine you've built your own LLM, that you're utilizing things that are either open source or through API. But I'm curious, how are you kind of mitigating the risk of being too overly reliant on a particular LLM or a particular application as a core feature of your business?
So we are a mixture of experts. We utilize, and the AI is not just, we don't just sell an LLM as a business. We sell a workflow product for advertisers to optimize and generate effective creative content. And that means there's a whole analytics stack that is kind of outside of LLMs. I mean, there is that multimodal capability, but it is a component of the analytics and the integrations we build and continue to build to get more data, to get richer insights. There is the whole brand management component of the business, which is LLM centric, and it's about training and fine tuning model on the customer's brand voice and understanding, what is the essence of that brand, what are the guardrails about that brand, what they can and they can't say, imagery they can and can't use when communicating their story to consumers and customers. And then there is the generative component, and the generative component is also the copy is LLM based, but also the imagery is diffusion based, and there's a whole workflow associated with creating and generating and fine tuning also images to generate product photos, and that's a whole stack of different AI capabilities. And so that whole stack, from the analytics to the brand management to the generation and ultimately the customer providing feedback for the content and approving the content and managing that content, is not something I believe that's on the roadmap of an LLM provider because that's just separate from and distinct from just building a better LLM. It's not something that building a better LLM will, that is not going to commoditize some of the other capabilities and parts of our workflow. So that's really what I think that as these LLMs get more powerful, we're really focused on the customer, the advertiser, and building the best tool set for them. And I think that's distinct from just the underlying power that these LLMs have and are getting.
Yeah, well, and that leads me into my second question, which is there's a lot of noise around AI companies, and it can be hard to stand out when you're trying to market, you're trying to grab market share, you're trying to reach your ideal customer. And everyone's saying that, oh, my AI company can give you this result, whereas you can actually do it and you've built a platform for it. What are the things that you've learned about trying to reach new clients, increase the number of people that know about you and what you do? What are some of the things that you've learned that have helped you cut through the noise and be effective in growing your base of clients?
Yeah, so we dogfood our product. So we don't have really an outbound sales team. We do have a sales team, but most of our outbound is done through our own advertisements. And what we found is that an advertisement is way more effective on an ROI basis than potentially an outbound sales team. And kind of to think in terms of first principles here is you're hiring a salesperson to, say, craft a personalized email to a person or a potential lead. And you have maybe, certain number of words you have to get their attention and click on that email, versus an ad is a rich story. It's a video. It could be 15 seconds long, 30 seconds long. The first 5 seconds really just to even engage the consumer, but it's, takes the whole screen. You can communicate, you can show your product in that medium. You can showcase, highlight the key value prop that person is interested in kind of solving in terms of their own pain points. And then they click on the ad and they get to your website, and then they can sign up that way. And it's actually not only a more richer medium for communicating the value props of your company, but also cheaper than an outbound sales team. The average cost for 1,000 impressions is about $10. So you pay $10 to show your message to 1,000 people. And that's substantially cheaper than hiring someone to send an email. And so even if they're using some kind of mail automation tool to kind of automate a lot of this stuff, it's just a richer media for telling that story. So that's what we found is doing top of the funnel with targeted ads and personalized ads, and then kind of closing those customers with a sales team.
And I imagine you have some retargeting layers built into that too. Like, yes, if they get to the homepage, but they don't get to the next page, then you can retarget with the initial ads or a different variation of it, or have some abandoned checkout advertising like, hey, do you have any questions? Happy to help. And then building smart advertising within each step to guide them through that process if they've self-selected as somebody who would really benefit from the service.
Well, it's said that you generally need 7 to 12 impressions to convert a customer. Mm-hmm. And so you want every single impression to be like an additional sequence to a story, right? You don't want to just kind of show them the same ad 7 to 12 times because they're probably going to mentally block it out after the second or third time. And so you really do need a lot of content to kind of walk them through the value journey. Maybe the first time you kind of just get their attention and you're just even aware of your company. The second time, maybe you communicate, a core value prop that resonates with them. Maybe third time you communicate another value prop that might be secondary to them. Fourth time you show a testimonial. Fifth time you show a discount. And so there's that journey that you kind of need to take that consumer through content. And historically, it's just really hard for marketers to create this humongous 12 pieces of unique content just for, say, a specific targeted audience or a cohort of potential users, and then to personalize that story across all different platforms and audiences and potentially products that you offer. And so this is a problem that AI solves very well, is taking them through that value journey, depending on what platform they're seeing that content on, depending on who that individual is, and depending on, potentially if you have dozens of different SKUs and products, making sure that you're communicating the right value prop of that product to that individual.
Yeah, no, 100%. And as the person trying to create those 12 unique pieces of content for each cohort, I can attest to how much work it is and how eventually you just throw in the towel and say, well, this will be fine for most people, so we'll just roll with that. And so it's great that you have a tool that can do that heavy lifting. I've got one last question for you before we wrap up. So one of the things that, I've been seeing or hearing in the AI space is that we're running out of content to train these models on. And so now we're having to use LLMs to create synthetic content or AI generated content to retrain the LLM. And, so then you propagate that out a little bit, and some people suspect there might be a point in time where AI is creating its own reality and learning from its own reality. And then as the number of unique human creators drops because everything is now being filtered through AI filters, that the internet becomes a place where you don't know what's real anymore. And so the very, very esoteric, 30,000 foot view question. But I guess, is there a point where AI kind of hijacks the through line of what is real? And just what do you think about that? Is that anything you think about, or you're like, no, that's not a problem for X, Y, and Z? I'm totally naive, but I'm just curious what you think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of key, trends that you're mentioning here. First off is these LLMs are, there's a lot of open source public data on the web, and that public data is getting limited because everyone's at this point crawled all that data. But there is a humongous treasure trove of data that is private, right? YouTube, better understanding all the video content that certain private companies have. That is a humongous data source that hasn't really been trained on sufficiently well yet. There's, for, say, a social network, they have all the messages of their users and the posts that are potentially private. A big enterprise has a lot of data regarding, how consumers are buying their product, or if you're kind of more of a manufacturing company, the manufacturing processes of your customers. And so there is an order of magnitude more data that is owned by private enterprises. And so, yes, the running out of data is true for, yes, the kind of, web crawling data, but there's probably, multiple orders of magnitude more data that exist owned by private companies. And so I think the next wave is not about these generalized models that are trained on data that everyone has access to, but again, these kind of enterprise LLMs trained on data that they only have the rights to, and creating a more effective way of unlocking the value that enterprises are sitting on based on all the data they have. And so that whole wave hasn't really I don't think even really started yet, frankly. And so that's one way of kind of resolving this kind of, there's not enough data issue. The other thing is this point on synthetic data. Synthetic data, it has its clear use cases, right? When you're building a self-driving car, there is synthetic data used to create simulations for that self-driving algorithm and that self-driving in a machine. You're running it through these internal simulations. You're generating, that's generative content, right? You're generating simulations for that car to drive through and provide almost like a unit test of updates you have for the software. If you're a drug discovery company, using synthetic data to, again, pass it through potentially some kind of basic tests of, is this new drug going to kill my patient or going to have some adverse effect? And so there is a use for synthetic data. It is not the be all end all catch all for, this lack of data. You do need real world data. And, if you're a self-driving car company, you can't simulate every single edge case, for a car. You at some point need to get that car in that algorithm in the real world, getting real world data. And if you're a drug manufacturer, for example, you need that drug, and ultimately, in the real world, interact with real and getting real data. But synthetic data does have its use to provide kind of at least the initial test, kind of the initial maybe unit test, the equivalent of a unit test, to really just make sure that it's checked, in that doesn't have that basic stuff doesn't need to be done in the real world. And so this concern regarding synthetic data is a bit more of a nuanced question. I think the practitioners of synthetic data who use synthetic data to train models and fine tune models are aware of the shortcomings of synthetic data, but it definitely has its uses. And so I think there's a bit of a more nuanced answer when it comes to the use of synthetic data.
Okay. Yeah, that's super insightful. I don't know if anybody else is curious about that, but I was personally curious. So I want to make sure I sneak this in before we end of the conversation. But this has been fantastic. Thank you for, sharing your insights, your background, your thoughts. Really cool to see what you're doing over at Omneky. Where can people that are listening go to learn more about you, your company, and connect with you online?
Absolutely. So go to our website, www.omneky.com. You can schedule a demo there. You can follow us on social media, on Facebook, on X, on LinkedIn. You can follow us on YouTube. You can email me at hi@omneky.com. And so, yeah, those are some of the ways that you can follow us and learn more about us.
Perfect. Well, Hikari, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a blast. And
thank you, Travis.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.